How's it going? I'm Ryan. Today I'm going to go over the two trades that I took, one on ES, one on NQ. First trade on ES was about break even. I got stopped out of it and then re-entered for about a similar gain. There's a little bit of a mistake on that one. I'll talk about that in a second. And then on NQ was a win that brought me to a positive trading day overall. We're looking at the daily time frame here on ES. We had that massive sell-off last Thursday. It was that bounced back on Friday. Today was a really choppy range day on both ES and NQ. We'll take a look at that. So there were some opportunities to be had, but certainly not a trending day, and definitely some volatility. So there's money to be made, but you had to trade the range and kind of understand what you were trading. We'll take a look at some of the zones I was watching. So we have yesterday's high, the green level, yesterday's low, the red level. Some zones in here. We have this zone. You can see resistance turn to support when we're above it. That was an area that we were bouncing off of in the pre-market and after hours as well. So we have that kind of 5244 to 5248 or so. To the upside, we have this swing low here that became resistance here and then support here when we're back above it. This was also an area that we were seeing some rejections in the pre-market, and that was 5262 to 5265 or so. We also had this trend line. If I back things on up a little bit, you can see this trend line here that we had bounced, broke it on Thursday, came up as kind of the high of day on Friday. And so that was an area I was watching for potential test and rejection if we got up there, which we did not. So that's what we were watching on ES or SPY, and essentially was just letting the day play out and seeing if we developed a trend, if we started to break out of our zones, and that didn't have any bias going into the day. Just wanted to let price action kind of determine what we were looking at. Right out of the gate, we came up and tested this upper zone, and you can see that we kind of got that test in the after hours, sold off. The pre-market, it came up and tested, had a huge rejection on the open all the way down to this bottom zone, in which case we started to bounce. I took a short position on this candle here. And why did I? Well, I was looking at two things. One, I was hoping for continuation to the downside based off the strength of this rejection off the open, and I was also looking at this area right here. So this high right here wasn't a part of my zone necessarily, but we did have a pretty big rejection up in here, which is around 5254 or so, 5253. And then we also had in the pre-market this morning, we had some rejections in this area, right? This like 5256, 5255. And so as we came up, we had this rejection down, had a bounce, and then we had declining volume into this area. We had these long wicks on the 5-minute as we were testing that 5256, 5254 kind of area. So we'll take a look at it on the 1-minute chart here. I entered a bit too early. I entered in here, or I guess on this candle here around 5254. My stop, I was trying to place my stop at 5256.5. It would have gotten hit regardless. So I will say I would have taken an initial loss on this trade. But I placed it, and instead of placing a stop limit or a stop loss, I just placed a buy order. And in doing so, it was automatically filled when price was still down here. So it canceled out my short and took a loss immediately for $25 or $26 or something. I'm not sure how much it was because it was filled automatically and it was kind of a mistake in the first place. So I got stopped out of this, essentially is what happened. I got stopped out And then I re-entered, and I re-entered once I saw this price action in here. We were testing this kind of area that we had held on the 1 minute slightly, as well as this pre-market area. We had some confluence in there. So I re-entered with 2 contracts. My initial position was 2 contracts, got stopped out for a loss, re-entered, sold 1 on this move down. I was trying to hold the remaining contract for low of day. In doing so, I put my stop loss at break even. We pushed down. I started moving my stop loss down. I had my stop loss right at 5254, where we had some previous rejection and then holding just prior. So as we were selling off, I moved my stop loss into profit. At this point, it was about like 2 points of profit. I entered somewhere around 5256 when I re-entered my position after getting stopped out. My stop was above this 5257, so if we broken back up and continued, I would have been stopped out. Now, I was trying to let this remaining contract run, which is why I was just moving my stop loss down gradually. Had it up at 5257, moved it down to break even, moved it down here to that closest level of support, and then when we pushed up, this wick right here stopped me out for profit on my runner, albeit smaller profit. Obviously, had I taken both contracts off down here, it would have been a much better trade. But this pretty much brought me to break even. I think I was negative $2 or $3 on the day after that initial stop out. I want to look at this though, and I want to kind of review this because it's not the best trade. It worked out, but a couple things. So one is that I entered too early, and 2 is that we had this clear. So I had this level here and I had this level here, right? And in the pre-market, we were bouncing back and forth between these. We weren't getting an hourly close between them. We hadn't formed a trend. And in doing so, taking this trade, what I was looking for was continuation to the downside, or at least a return back. My ideal target was low a day. We did have these long wicks on the 5 minute, but I think something to note is that we were within we were within Friday's range, right? We hadn't broken above the high or the low. We were also within this zone. We had seen how many times we had bounced from this area, once, twice, 3 times, 4, we kind of dipped below here, but 4, 5, 6, 7, up to here. At this point, the reaction, that fast bounce out of this area should have told me that we probably weren't going to just get a big rejection down. And to, I say it a million times, I'll say it again, hindsight is 20/20, so it's easier to look at this now and see that we did trade within this range and say, I shouldn't be taking shorts around here. I should be taking shorts at the top of the range and calls at the bottom, right? Or longs at the bottom, shorts at the top. So I think understanding where we were in the grand scheme of things, knowing that we bounced a few times, seeing this reaction that we got out of this area, probably not the best time to short it. Though we did get that 5 minute reversal looking pretty nice, right? So that does look like a reversal candle, and you see that we kind of bounced around before coming back down here. So it is what it is. I entered a bit too early, and I think I maybe didn't have the best trade idea in terms of looking for continuation there. I will just jump over to the 1 minute though and say that part of the reason why I took this trade as well is because we had this declining, and I might back it out so it's a little bit more evident here, but we had this declining volume, right? We had high sell volume. That selling volume remains high. As soon as we start to bounce, that volume drops pretty sharply, and really kind of dropped off around in here. So it wasn't the greatest trade. It worked out, pretty much ended up around a net zero, right? At a $3 loss overall, and that's with the contract fees and everything. So I think realistically it was about a 1-to-1 risk to reward in terms of what it ended up being there. So that's not the greatest. That was the only trade I took on ES, but I do want to look at a trade that I took on NQ. So I'm going to go over to NQ. I'm gonna back it up and we'll take a look at some of the zones that we were watching on here. So we had to the downside this support, and you see pre-market we were bouncing all around in there. Over here is resistance, and here also resistance once we got below it. Support, on last Friday once we came down and tested it right at that last kind of ending of the day and after hours. That's 18281 to 18293 or so, about 13-point range. A little bit above us, we had this 18318 to 18334, we'll call it. That was an area of resistance numerous times, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of 5 in here. So, and then to the upside, we had this swing high. So big swing high here, big support here, broke above, held support here, kind of close to the high of day on last Friday. And that zone was 18374 to 18389, we'll call it. Additionally, like ES, we had yesterday's highs and lows, which we did not test. And then additionally, we also had that support trend line that had been broken, similar to ES. So coming into the day, what were we watching? Same thing, right? Same thing. We were watching to see if we established a trend. Sorry, I just kind of got lost in the sauce there. But between these zones we see in the pre-market, we're just bouncing between them. We see that we kind of made our way up to this area on Friday and rejected. Aftermarket rejected. Pre-market almost got up there and rejected. So once ES and NQ kind of found a bottom, they rallied up. NQ was looking quite a bit stronger than ES at this moment. It was never really forming, lows. It kind of formed a low and then started forming lower highs until we ultimately formed a higher high here. I took a short position on this candle here. Reason being, I noticed that we were trading in this range, right? It looked to me that we were going to be having a range day at this point, especially after watching ES. And I was mostly watching this this hourly. So what happened? We get up here, we reject. We get up here, we reject. In the pre-market, we're up around that area, we reject. It was choppy range day, so I decided to play that range. I didn't make the most of it. So as you see, we kind of got a double top here and made our way all the way down to this bottom zone. That would have been a really, really, really nice move, right? 18,370 to say 18 to 80-point move. That would be beautiful. We'll get on that. We'll work on that someday. We're gonna capture that. But I took puts in here. Reason being, we had that rejection in the pre-market. This was the top of that range that we'd been kind of stuck in since Friday's close. And then we had this 5-minute close here, right? We have this volume increasing. The highest volume comes up, tests this zone pretty much to the T and rejects. As we start pushing up, we're looking weak. I'll jump on the 1 minute to show that. But as we're pushing up, we are failing to create higher highs. And we're kind of rejecting off the same area that we had wicks in here before we had that big breakdown in the pre-market and in the opening. So on this candle, I got into a short position and got about like a 15-point move. I was looking for a 20-point move, didn't quite get it. We just kind of started to bounce and I took a market fill and got out, but we'll take a look. So what did I mean when I said that we were looking weak? Well, we had that high volume, right? We came up, we touched this zone and rejected down. The next immediate candle is a bearish engulfing, right? So we see that rejection, then we see a bearish engulfing. That shows that there are sellers. Likewise, we see volume drop, right? Volume is dropping. This big momentum that we had coming into this zone is no longer there in terms of volume, at least. And also the price action, right? We have this little candle. We have this little tiny candle, barely green, pretty much a doji, those long top wicks. I entered on this candle here. So after we got this rejection, this bearish engulfing, volume drops. We show weakness. We're not making higher highs. We're not showing that continued strength that we had through here. And then we are also at the top of this range that we had rejected off of previously. So that was my rationale. My stop loss, I had a little bit bigger of a stop loss. My stop loss was above high a day when I entered in here. I was aiming for 18,340. I didn't quite get there. I sold on this candle here. And the reason being is because we had this move down. We had this hammer. And then we made this wick on the bottom side too. So these two candles in kind of back to back made me think that we might get a bounce. Also, NQ was a little bit more bullish, right? We had a higher high. we are in an uptrend, and the current, situation was trending up. So although it was a range day, we had relative strength coming into this move. So I was trying to take this reversal. You see it did work out really well on the retest. So I trimmed. I only had one contract. I exited here. But we did come up, retest, and then get a pretty big rejection followed by a move, gradually stepping all the way down to that next zone before we kind of reversed and then started chopping within the range that we have here. So very small move that I caught on NQ, but NQ moves pretty volatile, and with $2 per point and it moving 20-30 points pretty fast, you can kind of scalp NQ. NQ is pretty solid for scalping. That brought me to $19 positive on the day. I didn't take any more trades. Another rejection up here would have been solid. Taking bounces, I guess we jumped below that zone of support there, but you could have traded, especially later in the day, this range. You can see that we just kind of bounce back and forth. So trading the range kind of worked out. I think this double top, this rejection off the top of this range was probably the nicest play of the day on NQ. I caught a very small portion of it. That's all I have. Days like today can be a little bit tricky to trade, especially seeing like these 5-minute candles, just these long wicks in either direction, slowly grinding up, but not really giving much indication to what it wants to do. That's tricky. And even some of these, right? Like you get this, look how big this candle is, but look how much of it is a wick. Like 2/3 of it is just wick, where it dropped, 40-50 points and then just pushes right back up and then continues to drop. And candles like this, it's a difficult trading day. So coming out with a win. I didn't want to overtrade today. Today is not the day to be taking a bunch of trades. So although I didn't capture the full extent of this range, I think on days like today, you do have to kind of get in and out, or at least be very, very stingy with your stop loss. Take profit when you have it, because as you can see, things can reverse on you. So that's all I got. Thank you for watching. I do trade live Monday through Friday. I'll be here until Thursday. So Thursday and Friday I will be out this week. But tomorrow and Wednesday I'll be trading live. Love to see you around. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for stopping by. Peace.